Hey folks, Steve here with a special unboxing video for you today. We're going to be looking at Banish All Their Fears. This is the first volume in the Bayonet and Musket series, covering just two battles, this being Nirvinden, which I'm sure I am butchering that pronunciation, from the War of the League of Augsburg, and Blenheim from the Spanish Succession. This is from David Fox and Ben Hall. Ben Hall, known for a number of 30 Years' War designs. This is sort of the next step, I guess, if you were trying to find, just in terms of like what kind of game is this? It's a battle game, obviously, and it fits in the same mold as the Musket and Pike series, obviously. Now it's Bayonet and Muskets, so a little bit of a transition now to a later era. And it's interesting because there's certainly other game systems out there that try to cover some of this time period, but at least to me, it certainly feels a bit shallow in terms of the options that are out there. So I am enthused by the idea of this series growing over time and covering more of the either late 1600s or early 1700s time period, trying to find that great battles of history equivalent, because the great battles of history obviously ends as you just start getting towards the medieval time period. And there are other systems that cover that, and I'll be doing some unboxing videos on that note very soon. And so this fits in there, before, I guess, Prussia's glory, before the battles of the American Revolution. We potentially have this. So we'll go ahead and take the shrink wrap off, and we'll get a good look at everything here. I don't have a whole lot of foreknowledge of what all will be included here, so we're going to discover that along the way. I do like the box. It's sort of a dark red color, and has some artwork here that is of the time period. I'm just going to take it around. This is a normal size box. The box is pretty good quality. You can see what we're talking about here, right? Hex encounter, showing some towns. I can let you read this. I'm not going to read all of the information on the back, but probably the most important thing just to take a look at here is what the units are starting to look like. What I do like, and this is somewhat similar to what we've seen in the recent Musket and Pike reprint, is trying to put on the counter like what the regiments would look like in line of battle, um, which is a bit different than what we've seen elsewhere. So we have a double-sided map, so you can't play both battles at once. You have a rules of play, playbook manual, 5 counter sheets, which feels like a good bit, actually. So that's kind of interesting to think about. Command display, player aids, tables, player aid cards, timekeeping card, 2d10s. And then just to show, and what's interesting is how high they're rating the solitaire suitability. So I'm sure I'll get to that. Game time is 3 to 7 hours, which makes this much more reasonable to try to get to the table. One hex is about 200 yards. One turn is 20 minutes. Infantry units are battalions, and so on and so forth there. So, straightforward package. We'll see everything else here in just a moment. Lots of baggies, so that's always good. I'm not sure how many I'll end up using, depending on the way these counters are. I may even look at doing a counter tray, so these can go into my inventory of bags. 2d10, they're both gray, so don't know if it's going to end up being, both players have to roll their die. If so, then just watch out because they're both gray. Not sure how much that's going to matter, or maybe you use a 2d10 system. I'm not sure. So here's the rules of play. So this is non-glossy paper, sort of standard for just a new game for GMT. Does look like it is color 2-column format. So let's just take a look at the table of contents for a second here, because I think that's a good indicator of what we're going to have on our hands. So sequence of play, the command display to map relationship. So that's kind of interesting. We're going to be looking in 2 different places for things. We give orders. So march order, charge order, dress ranks, leaders, how leaders work, movement, which is just on page 14. Facing is going to matter, apparently, so that's on page 15, but maybe not a huge complexity in the facing rules here. Stacking, artillery gets a page or two, combat gets several pages. So linear warfare, infantry combat, cavalry combat. How about cavalry versus infantry or vice versa? Okay. Morale, routed movement. Okay. That seems pretty straightforward. I think that all makes sense to me. You can see they've got the usual sort of breakout of what the counters are and what everything means. So we have a listing of a unit's parent brigade. It's the regiment that you're looking at. Combat value, which appears to be relatively simple. So we're just dealing with a combat value in singular for the unit itself, with a reduced version on the back if it becomes reduced or disordered. So that's kind of interesting. And then there's a distinction, and this may be hard to tell, a 3-rank unit versus a 4-rank unit. You're actually going to have to count the ranks there on the picture, which is interesting, because you can see that says 4 ranks, but there's not a 4 on the counter. So there's going to be some interesting things to try to grok in playing this game that would be a bit different than, I think, other games in the same vein. We'll see. You have leaders, historical wing, level of command. So having commanders in charge of particular wings or formations will be present in the system. Artillery will be fired and will likely have a fire marker placed on them. Okay. Firefight, momentum markers, committed. So it looks like there's a decent set of options here. And we see scale terminology. Okay, so this is what I was really looking for here. So we see the command display, and we see some examples of mechanics, which is always really important to understand. I'm definitely interested to see how this is going to compare to, say, Prussia's Glory or Battles of the American Revolution. It is very clearly different, and it probably shares some design anatomy with musket and pike. So that might just be conjecture, but certainly want to see how that goes. Looks like you can transfer brigades, and that may be handled with the command display. So that's kind of interesting. I'm not sure how all this is going to flow together. If you're looking at both the command display, which is handling things at one level of abstraction, and then the actual map of battle. So that will be interesting. And you can see the firing arc of artillery and the way that they adjudicate that. So straightforward, in terms of like what I would expect in terms of content in the rulebook. Looks like there are plenty of pictures, colored pictures of examples or reference figures to look at when trying to understand a rule. So when we look at this, and it's coming in at 24 pages on the back here for the rules, really talking about less than 24 pages of like actual rules. That doesn't seem like it'll be much more complex than any other system in its league. So that's kind of good to understand, to know kind of what you're getting into with a new system, because I guess technically this is a new system. Now the playbook is quite thick, interestingly enough. So this is the playbook. If we take a look at this, I wonder what's contributing to that page count. We'll look at the table of contents here. So we have, for the first battle, that's taking up 20 page, nearly 20 pages, not quite 20 pages, 16 pages of stuff. So there's a historical narrative, start time and victory conditions, setup instructions, special rules, order of battle, and that seems to be contributing a lot to the page count here, and then pretty much the same kind of thing for the second battle. So we'll see. Same format, page quality. Looks like there's a nice rundown of the wars that are represented here, of the battles of each. And I do like this. So there's a nice picture of the battlefield, so you can kind of see things in context, which is always good if you're unfamiliar with the battles themselves. So the historical narrative, the major figures involved here listed, which is always nice. And then we see the command display. Again, you almost look at like this could be a simple war game in itself, right? You would just like in the most simplest of terms, you would have these wings and maybe you'd roll off there, but I suspect we're really dealing with a different sort of thing. So the regimental listings here. This is interesting, but there's a lot of information that's being conveyed here that's almost purely historical. So just to show here, they got some pictures, they've got some information on units, and then they've got like, okay, here's this brigade, well, here's the regiments underneath, and historical information like established 1642, which is maybe ballooning up the page count for that. But if you're really interested in this sort of thing, you're getting a lot of that right here, quite a bit of that in terms of page count. So we start getting into some of the more specialist stuff, and now we're into the second battle. So there's a lot of information here that maybe isn't really game related. When you look at all of this, I'd have to see how much of it really matters. But then you have far fewer pages that appear to actually be like, these are rules you have to read to understand how to play the battle. So I guess at first I was thinking this playbook was being so thick there was going to be like a ton of special rules, but that's really not the case. This seems to be similar. There's good historical information, there's special rules, and then the order of battle stuff just gets very in-depth here, talking about each regiment and some of the historical notes on them. So I would suspect that the research for this game is very deep to get this level of detail understood, or they used a really good source reference for this information. Huh. So just a lot to absorb there. And okay, thank goodness. So looking at, okay, we have historical notes, and you get a lot of information on how things were set up. So cavalry formations, how did they work? Infantry formations, how did they work? How were things structured? I love this stuff. So I'm really glad to see it here. I really do love this sort of thing. The hollandaise technique, not for your breakfast. Designer notes. This is all the kind of stuff I just love to dig into before I play a game. I'll often spend a huge amount of time just reading this stuff, getting immersed in it. And now we see the detailed example of play, which is going to be really critical. And you can kind of see that relationship from the command display up here to what's on the map. And there's some accounting there. I'm not going to be able to fully describe what that is here, unfortunately. So I've got homework to do. But this is very nice to see. It's very detailed. I can see just the way that they're describing things, that if you want to understand the mechanics and how things operate, that example of play is going to do a very good job of helping you bridge your understanding or deal with the expectations you may have if you're coming into this from maybe another game system that's very similar. So very good. I like that. So we see here's the command display, and it's one side for one battle, the reverse side for the other. I'm not sure how much it would matter. So if I look, okay, so each of these columns is set to be a particular command, I think. So you couldn't have, I guess, a system neutral command display. They're really bespoke for each battle, maybe, is what this is going to mean. More of the player aid chart. So here's infantry and artillery combat tables. You can see it may result in a firefight or defender retreat or taking hits. And artillery is kind of very different. So you have misses, and then you have some icons that are going to translate to something, which is that'll take some adjusting to, I think. cavalry versus cavalry, cavalry versus infantry. So lots of different types of combats. Definitely getting like a GB, Great Battles of History, GBOH feel from the level of detail that we're seeing. Command and movement tables, and very helpful to see how charges are supposed to be run and the effect of the charge in terms of map space, which is good. So this being a new system, I mean, I'm just in seeing how much support there is in terms of examples of play and the player aid charts and what's in here. Here's like a display. I have a pretty good feeling that this game is going to be, it's going to be helping you as much as you can expect to be helped to learn a new system. And now we get into the counter sheets. Now, these are decent sized counters, and these are brown core, so I think this speaks to some strengths here. The GMT opted to do this quality of a game on its first print run. I've certainly seen games by GMT where if it's a new series or maybe one that hasn't quite proven itself, that they don't go in for the brown core. They may not go in for the nice rule books, and maybe they're making some general changes, which would be very nice here. So we see a lot of these markers. The full context of all of this not totally hitting me yet. Let's see the back for these. So sheet 1, which is looking to be mostly battle agnostic, and then we have some, I believe, French units and maybe Bavarian units here. And just see, you get both. You have a name of a unit or a leader, the various stats, and then in some cases you get the nice flag in addition to the iconography, which is interesting to see. But everything looks good. The registration, never really, I don't expect a problem there, but still good to see. Everything looks solid. There does appear to be, oh, okay, so I see. So this is Blenheim French, and then we're kind of getting into the other battle down here, and there is a dotted line to notate that. Lots and lots of units. Again, the pictures used, which appear to have some game mechanic to it in determining the number of ranks in that unit, does kind of make your eyes glaze over a little bit, just like holding it this far back. You just see lines and lines and lines. So that's something I'm going to have to train my brain on to just get better at looking at these things and not having my eyes glaze over. That may not be a real issue when I get to playing, but just taking note of what things look like. I think if this game had used smaller counters, we would have less counter sheets, but this game appears to just be, it's nice and the counters are decent size, so you're just going to end up with more counter sheets, but they're going to be easy to punch because, again, we're looking at brown core. So knock these guys out, get to playing pretty quickly. I don't know whether or not I would seek to round the corners of this game or not, but so it goes. Yeah, on the back side, you get the disordered. Yeah. And then we get to the map, and I may do just a very quick look here at the map. Again, it's a single double-sided paper map, so you're going to have some limitations if you wanted to try to do both battles at the same time. I don't know that folks are really going to end up doing that very often. Now, for this particular battle, it's a lot of flat terrain with roads, trees. I don't think that will have any real game effect. So this is really, and of course the couple of rivers here. So for what's here, there's not a huge amount of terrain. And in fact, the terrain key, which is up in the upper right there, there's only a couple of terrain, different types of terrain called out there. Clear, village, forest, stream, and river. And everything here, there's a major, like there's a proper river in the northwest, and then these are considered streams otherwise, and we have villages and so on. So kind of interesting to see just how plain the terrain is for this battle. It's probably not surprising. And then here for Blenheim, it is a little bit different. So you have both the roads, streams, rivers, much more foresty to the north and to the west here, but the maps look clean, functional. Given the time period, given the locations of these battles, there's going to be a lot more open terrain, and then fighting around the towns probably being significant factors here. But that all is in alignment with expectations. So it'll be interesting to see how successful this system really is, and then do we get a volume 2, do we get a volume 3 or beyond? There's kind of a nice split here between two different wars of the time period, wars that I'm more familiar with from some other games that cover these conflicts at a more strategic level, which is always interesting. But it's nice to have something here that covers the battle scale. But yeah, so you would figure maybe we would see some additional War of Spanish Succession battles here. Whether or not this series will go to, say, the 1740s and start to overlap then with wars of Austrian succession or 7 Years' War, who knows? I would imagine if they did, they may not have to change a whole lot within the system. But we'll see. It would be interesting to contemplate and compare this to, say, Prussia's Glory, if they were to ever in this system in the future cover battles from the 7 Years' War. But I mean, this is a good opportunity again to hit those battles from conflicts from the late 1600s and early 1700s. Again, that I don't feel get a whole lot. I know Blenheim does get there are games on Blenheim out there. But I'm glad to have something here, and I definitely would like to get this to the table. There's a lot of games in my backlog, but I'm glad to see this first step into a new series that can bridge sort of another time period at the battle level that's coherent and manages to capture the essence of the time period. I suspect this will, given the designers and at least Ben Hull, who I'm more familiar with. And this whole thing here, this all looks very, very good. So hopefully that gave you a look into a new game system. The proof will be in the pudding to try it out and play it and see how things run out. But if you're curious to see the quality of the contents of the package, hopefully this video was useful to you. We'll wrap it up here. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Take care. Keep on gaming. We'll see you in the next one.